Please fasten your seatbelt, Senator Clark. We're landing.
I hope the airport isn't too crowded. Where's the airport? He lands out there in the middle of that wasteland and someone transfers him to a car.
Mobile Tic-Tac 1 to Tic-Tac base. Permission to enter Code Red Lion.
Tic-Tac base to Mobile Tic-Tac 1. Permission granted.
I've seen houses with the garage under, but I've never seen a garage door like that. I want one, and I don't even have a garage. Where is this taking us? It's taking us on an acid trip. They took the senator down there and dosed him. Oh, it's the opening theme. My mistake. James Darren was a well-established movie star who was making the move to television with good success. Robert Colbert enjoyed steady work through the 60s, but never really found what you'd call a breakout role. But his acting was and is solid and dependable. Irwin Allen was already known for making successful sci-fi shows, and he not only produced this pilot, he directed it. So with two excellent leads and his know-how behind it, the show seemed destined to be a sure hit. And the truth is it was. We'll talk about that in due time. After some security matters, the senator gets his first look at the project that has so far cost the equivalent of $60 billion in today's money.
There are over 12,000 personnel quartered in each of those complexes.
Okay, when does Sean Connery show up and destroy the villain's lair? But the senator hasn't seen anything yet. It's time to ride the elevator from hell.
It'll be over in a few seconds, Senator.
It'll be over just as soon as you have that seizure, Senator. At the bottom, he encounters an old friend.
Leroy!
I'm guessing that samovar below them is the power plant that runs this whole thing.
Hello, Leroy.
Woody,
Hi, it's been a long time.
how did they ever get an old dog face like you out of the mud?
Worst paratroop officer I ever commanded. I told him to go into politics where he couldn't hurt anyone.
There's a ringing endorsement. A brief discussion makes it clear that the senator is here to pull the funding for this project. He's invested $7 billion, but he's ready to throw that away and write the whole thing off as a bad idea. And what happens to this complex and all these people? But as we know, politicians deal in dollars, not real people. Doug says Tony needs to be part of this conversation. He's in the tunnel. The senator calls it an expensive toy. Doug is insulted. You can't blame him. This senator is a jerk.
According to your reports, all you've ever sent back in time are mice and monkeys.
So far, yes.
How do you know they weren't just disintegrated?
Well, disintegration would cause some residue in matter.
Have you ever returned any of these animals to this laboratory, safe and sound?
Not yet, no, but we...
Then, so far as we know, this whole thing might be just a fancy disappearing act. Isn't that true?
Actually, at this point of...
You're guessing, Doctor.
Asking a question and then interrupting the answer is worse, Senator. If you're going to ask a man a question, let him speak. Unless you're afraid of the answer, which this guy clearly is. He's got his mind made up and doesn't want it clouded with any inconvenient facts. It's time to meet Tony. He's been working way back in the tunnel.
It's going to work. I just finished the polarization and it just feels right. Take a look.
Senator Leroy Clark, Dr. Anthony Newman.
Excuse me, Senator.
Doctor, you seem a little young for that title. Not to mention being number 2 man on this project.
Ah, he's also a bigot. You can't be smart unless you're at least older than Tony. It's clear this investigation of his is nothing but a hatchet job, and he's fishing for any excuses he can find. I hope he got voted out the next time around.
I'm glad you were interested enough in our project to pay us a personal call, Senator.
Let's just say I don't like to scrap billions of dollars by just sending a memo.
Scrap?
Tony, the senator feels our experiments haven't shown enough success to warrant the time and money invested.
But we're so close now.
Close to what, son?
To sending a man back in time and returning him, of course.
The senator says it's been 10 years, so if you're that close, do it. Send a man back in time and return him. Today, right now, or I pull the plug. I want to punch this guy so bad I may have to buy a new TV. Tony says, fine, I'll go. Doug says, no way, you'd be committing suicide and I won't allow that for the sake of a budget. Tony is disgusted.
Excuse me.
He seems a little emotional for a scientist. Well, anything else you want to show me?
Plenty.
Starting with my foot up your behind, you arrogant idiot. This guy is way too good an actor. They head off to show him more of the complex. Guess who? And guess what he's doing? That's supposed to happen, by the way. Pyrotechnics are part of the process.
This is a red alert. Red alert. All time tunnel personnel report to their stations on the double.
Tony has disappeared and more pyrotechnics are going off. It would seem that the tunnel is working so far.
George, start the countdown.
16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11.
What's happening to him?
What you demanded, Senator. A brilliant man is risking his life to satisfy your stupidity. Is it satisfied?
He's in a radiation freeze. It's the first step in his relocation.
5, 4, 3,
Pray that it works.
1, 0.
All right, start a location probe.
This is one of the reasons the tunnel wasn't ready yet. They need the capability of locating where the person is, both in time and space, and locking onto them so they can bring them back. When it comes to developing stuff like that, 10 years is a short time, and 7, or 60 if you prefer, $billion is a drop in the bucket. The fact that you don't have the education to understand it is not evidence that it's a boondoggle.
Anne, find what specific radiation Tony used.
I'll try.
Lee Merriweather was a regular on this show. Atomania fans might recognize Catwoman from the movie.
Where is he?
He could be living in yesterday or next week or a million years from now.
How do you know?
You've got your guinea pig, Senator.
Doug!
Okay, take a sock at me if it'll make you feel any better.
Thank you, Senator. Don't mind if I do. When you wake up, I'll consider answering your questions.
But I'd still like to know what's going on.
Tony just finished developing that radiation bath. That was the blue mist you saw just before he disappeared. Now, in theory, this should give us a magnetic fix, like a homing device, to enable us to locate him in time.
In theory. But what if it doesn't work?
Well, then he'll be lost in time for the rest of his life.
And you can have that on your conscience for the rest of your life. While the senator is trying to find a dictionary so he can look it up and find out if he even has a conscience, let's look in on Tony. They sure do a lot of the good drugs on this show.
Are you hurt?
I've made it.
You are hurt. I'll call someone.
Oh, no, I'm fine, really.
But you had a very bad fall.
We saw a short clip of the ship with its unmistakable 4 smokestacks, plus we saw the previews for the show, so we know he's on the Titanic. He doesn't yet. The lady invites him to sit down and get his bearings.
Anthony Newman.
Althea Hall. Do all Americans adopt the vigorous life just to please your Teddy Roosevelt?
Teddy?
Mr. Roosevelt.
Oh, no, I guess I should have put on a jacket. I didn't think it would be so cold.
Teddy Roosevelt should give him an idea what time period he's in. Now, if he could just figure out what ocean he's in, he'd be in a little better shape. She mentions London and New York, so that narrows it down. He's in an ocean on Earth. He also gets out of her that it's Saturday, April 13th. He hasn't found out what year it is yet, but I think he's starting to get an idea. Put your money on 1912, Tony. They chat a little more and he takes his leave to go find that jacket.
Titanic.
Althea did say it's supposed to be the biggest ship ever built. Only one ship fit that description in Teddy Roosevelt's time. He'd better hope the gang in the time tunnel can bring him back soon. Speaking of whom, Doug is doing his best to explain all this to the senator using as many one-syllable words as possible so the bean counter can understand. When they can locate Tony's radiation signature, they can track him, and the information they get will be relayed to an audio-visual recorder. They'll be able to see and hear him. Remarkably enough, the system activates at the very moment Doug finishes explaining it.
Ray.
I know, Doug. I'm beginning to get some irregular coordination. Sounds like bells.
That sound is all they can get so far. Meanwhile, Tony has found the captain. He says, I have to tell you something for the sake of thousands of lives.
I don't know how to say it without sounding like I'm out of my mind.
Come, my dear fellow, you're dissatisfied with your accommodations or the food, or perhaps you've misplaced something and you're afraid it's been stolen. In any case, I'm sure you...
This ship is the Titanic.
Is that what you had to tell me?
Tony starts trying to explain and just sounds crazier and crazier. He keeps talking in the past tense about how the Titanic hit an iceberg and sank. Captain Rennie there isn't having it.
I can't remember the exact hour and day of the disaster, but it's history.
Stop this rubbish. We are riding on a calm sea and you talk about sinkings and disasters as though they'd already happened.
It has for me, Captain. I was born in 1938.
Not surprisingly, the captain says confine him somewhere and keep a guard on him.
Ray, we need some pressure magnification. Ship that size, it couldn't have been too long ago. Anybody recognize it?
Everybody should if they paid attention to history in school. The general tells them what we already know. Now the question is, where's Tony? And can we bring him back? Wait, that's two questions. Anyway, the senator says, but he's alive in this time. How can he be affected by what happens back then? I can't believe they have to explain it to him, but Tony isn't in 1968 anymore. He's in 1912. And if he's on the ship when it goes down, he'll die in 1912. I want to know what genius put this senator in charge of funding this project.
Just a few minutes, Mom.
How did you find me?
I just spoke to the captain. Is it true that you're a stowaway?
In a sense, yes.
He starts trying to explain, but it's a good thing he's in research. He sucks at PR. The more he talks, the crazier he sounds, and she's not sure what to make of it. The only thing she's sure of is that nobody knows the future, not even him. Good thing that sailor is on the ball and aware of his surroundings. Or not. He has no idea any of that happened. The scanner has zeroed in on Tony. He's been pounding on the door just to annoy that sailor.
Doug! I don't know if you're picking me up. If you're just getting sound, I'm on the Titanic. Locked in a forward cabin just above the waterline.
He's right about where the iceberg sliced the ship open.
It's 9:15 a.m. April 14th, 1912. I don't know when it's gonna sink, but they've got me locked up because I tried to warn the captain.
They have an exact date and time, both of the iceberg hit and the ship sinking, so they know how much time they have. Time to do what?
Theoretically, we can suspend Tony in his time zone and remove him from it. But during that suspension, Tony's body processes, his heart, his breathing, his tissue regeneration would all stop. Unless we can return him here or to some other time zone within seconds, we'll kill him.
But isn't the idea to do just that and bring him back to this time? Isn't that the whole premise of the project? Instead, Doug says, I can go back there and help him get free. He knows what's going to happen, so he can easily find a way to be one of the survivors. He doesn't have to add, yeah, and I can too.
Well, what do you suggest, that we just sit here and watch him die? At least my way, he'd have a chance. Now remember, I'll appear there dressed for the period and prepared with the facts. That reminds me. Have research get me a copy of a New York paper dated April 15th, 1912.
He's not going to be talked out of this, and the general really can't even order him out of it. He's going, and that's that. The general gives in.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I'm still a little fuzzy here. The idea of the radiation bath was so they could get a lock on him and not just see and hear him, but bring him back. Why haven't they tried to do that? I get the feeling that's what Doug was trying to tell the senator when he was so rudely interrupted. Based on what the general said, they can move him around in time, but they haven't sorted out how to land him in a specific destination yet. That could be kind of important. They miscalculated and sent him to...
Hey now, where'd you come from?
Oh, he's in the boiler room. That's only slightly better. He finds a maintenance closet and starts to wash his hands.
It's all right. Come on in. Anything wrong, son?
It's not hard to see what's going on here. I think Doug is amused.
Oh, excuse me. It's all right. I'm just washing up.
Ah, you didn't happen to see a little French boy with his pockets bulging with food, did you?
Did you say food?
Yes, sir. His parents are immigrants in the 3rd class, and he's been raiding the dining room tables in the 1st class for leftovers. Not that we blame the little fella, sir, but if you allow one, they'll all descend on you, if you know what I mean, sir.
Of course.
The little fella seems to have given me the slip. He's a clever little tyke, you know. Now, who left this about?
That's mine, thank you.
Oh, I see, sir. Carry on.
All right, he's made an ally on the ship. This ally knows where Tony is and is ready to help Doug get in to see him. It's the same old story. If you want to know what's really going on, don't talk to the people in charge. Talk to the people in the trenches. They're the ones who know. Little known fact, that sailor almost didn't get off the ship because Marcel tied him up so well with that fire hose. When the other officials found him, he was wearing the nozzle as a hat.
Doug! Are you all right? That radiation gimmick of yours was great, Tony. We were able to home right in on you. Why, I could even pick up the sound of your voice right through those bulkheads. And I was able to pick this point in time exactly.
You were out of your mind to come here. Now we're both stuck on the ship.
My point exactly. Can you bring them back or can't you? On the ship, Doug says, we can take over the wireless room and call for help before the collision occurs. That way there'll be no Titanic disaster. Step 1, the guard outside the door.
Let me out of this place, you hear me? I said let me out, I'll break a hole in this tub.
What the devil? You're asking for it, all right.
Doug is sending the message while Tony guards the door. Or at least tries to. The captain arrests both of them and tells the wireless people, send a message telling all ships to disregard that previous transmission. There goes that idea. Doug gives him the newspaper and he throws it out the porthole without looking at it. It's 11:40 p.m. Althea is playing a happy tune on the piano. The captain is relaxed. All is well.
Oh, thank you. Come with me, Mr. Granger.
He knows what happened, and I suspect he remembers what Doug told him.
We have hit an iceberg, just as the two of you predicted. How could you have known?
Captain, the only explanation is the truth. You see, we come from the year 1968. We've traveled back through time to this moment. What's happening here is history to us.
My reason cannot accept that.
Nevertheless, they convince him to start lowering the lifeboats because they know the ship is doomed. He decides it's a reasonable precaution.
Very well, gentlemen. With more than 2,300 souls on board, I cannot afford to ignore even the remotest possibility.
May as well lay it all out for him.
Your lifeboats will only hold about 750.
How did you know that?
Well, despite the fact that this ship was built and advertised as a vessel that could not be sunk, your life-saving equipment is insufficient and inadequate.
Are you telling me that only 750 will survive?
Yes, sir.
May as well lay it all out for him.
It occurs to me now you may even know whether I will die tonight.
Yes, sir, I'm afraid you will.
He did ask, but I have a feeling he already knew the answer. While we watch the Titanic disaster from the point of view of footage borrowed from the 20th Century Fox film library, the show did that a lot at building all those sets, Tony has found Althea. She's still playing the piano.
It doesn't matter for me.
Althea!
Tony, you don't understand. I've no right to take a place in one of those lifeboats. I'm not a rich girl on holiday. I'm just an ordinary school teacher. I spent the last penny of my savings for this trip.
What difference does that make?
The difference is I'm going to die soon anyway.
She has a brain tumor. That's what the pills are for, to deal with the effects of it. Her doctor in London told her she has a few months to live, but in New York they're playing with a new fad called neurosurgery. She might consider giving that a try. But her London doctor is skeptical, and so she's not very hopeful.
Neurosurgery is not a fad, and it's not hopeless. Althea, some brain operations have become as commonplace as taking out tonsils.
Become?
Althea, you'll just have to trust me. The chances that you can be helped are probably much better than you think.
He keeps at her and tells her she's playing God, deciding when it's time for her to live or die, and she relents. He takes her to a lifeboat. Once she's safely aboard, he and Doug head to a different deck to help out.
Freeze them! Oh, what happened to them?
They're alive. The time transfer worked.
Where?
We don't really know.
Can we establish any limits?
Not with certainty.
Hurry, they're dying!
Accelerate power.
I guess they're done helping out. Where/when are they going to land? Senator Schiff is going back to Washington with a promise that nobody will touch their funding until those two are safely back in their own time and place. How generous of him, considering he was the cause of it all in the first place, because he worships a balance sheet rather than life. But I think maybe he got a tiny bit of education today. Will it stick? We don't know. He won't be back. He wasn't really a human himself. He was a two-legged catalyst to get the story going. Serves him right.
This is Mission Control. We are at launch minus 60 seconds and counting. Launch minus 55. Minus 50. Minus 45.
Get used to those slow-motion rolling falls. It's their normal mode of landing. They're in a huge rocket and it's about to take off. The only thing they can do is flatten themselves against the floor and hope they don't become part of it. Cliffhanger achieved. I have a lot of questions about this project that I didn't have when I was 13. Today, I would have one suggestion for Tony. Instead of going yourself, throw the senator in there and see what happens. He said he wanted to see things firsthand, so there you go. But I guess my main serious question is, why did Tony do that if he knew they couldn't really bring him back? Or was he hoping it'd work this time because he promised it a cookie? I know he was calling the senator's bluff. The senator said, send someone back right now, fully expecting them to refuse so he could pull the plug on it. But if he was fairly sure they didn't have the means to bring him back yet, what did he expect them to do? Did he have an end game in all this beyond keeping his funding, even if it meant going down with the Titanic? But I have an even more fundamental question.
You know, Phillips, every time I check your budget figures, I ask myself the same question. Is time travel really worth all this?
Senator, the control of time is potentially the most valuable treasure that man will ever find.
Why? Doesn't it depend on what you do with it? It seems to me it's kind of like fire. You can use it to do good things like warm yourself, or you can use it to do bad things like hurt someone. Assuming you achieve this control over time, what do you intend to do with it? How do you intend to exercise that control, and to what end? How will your control of time affect my life? I get the feeling that this falls under that famous category of yes you can, but should you? Having said that, it was interesting that they were able to change history in a small way. They couldn't prevent the disaster, but they did save one life, Althea's. She was prepared to go down with the ship, but Tony talked her into living. I'd like to see what the ripples from that are. But the fact that they can do that promises some interesting and off-the-usual-path stories. Let's see where it takes us.